The Kodiaq has been a very important car for Skoda. More than 850,000 of these things have been sold worldwide. But that left the company with a bit of a problem. You see, when it comes to replacing a car like that, do you change very little and kind of hope nobody notices the lack of effort? Or do you change everything and hope people will still like it? With this new Kodiaq, Skoda's kind of done a bit of both. This bodywork is completely new. It's much more aerodynamic than before. It's got clever new headlights. It's got a new grille. And the whole thing creates much less drag. But it still looks like a Kodiaq. It's recognizable. And that's a bit of a metaphor for what the brand's done under the skin as well. The question is, will it be as appealing as its predecessor? Inside, Skoda has taken a lot of inspiration from the new Superb. That means you get this nice minimalist dashboard, you get this two-spoke steering wheel and a big touchscreen, and a very clean overall impression. It's got this new gear selector, which takes a little bit of getting used to, but it's allowed Skoda to create this massive center console full of storage for odds and ends and all their Simply Clever additions. You've got bins in the door cards, you've got loads of cup holders, you've got these massive glove boxes, 2 of them, and then you've got little touches like this. It looks like a vape, but actually it's for cleaning your massive touchscreen once you've got your muddy paw prints all over it. That touchscreen uses a lot of Volkswagen Group's new technology, and we've been a bit critical of that in the past, but it is much better than some of the old VW units. Whether it's as good as the old system, we're not sure, but it does have lots of clever features. One feature it doesn't have, though, is the climate control system, and we're pretty pleased about that. Instead, Skoda's put some conventional dial type buttons down here, and it's much easier to use. You just change the temperature like that. You can do it without looking when you're driving. This third button in the middle, however, has a clever press function that changes what it does, from setting the volume to setting the driving modes or changing the map zoom settings even. Overall, it is a much more modern interior, but it's still just as robust as before. All these plastics feel nice and premium. It's all really nicely stitched together, and it's going to stand the test of time. Skoda also says it's more spacious. There's apparently 15mm more headroom in the back. But will those 7 seats really accommodate 7 adults? We're not quite sure. Now, I didn't receive many gifts in life's lottery, but one of them was height. And that might make getting in the back of this interesting. Now, Skoda says there's room for 7 adults in here, but I'm not so sure. So let's give it a whirl. This might not be dignified. Right. Ow. Ow. Well, I'm in, sort of. If I do that, well, I do sort of fit in here, but headroom's a bit tight and my knees are sort of up round my chest. So it might be all right for going to the pub on a summer's evening, but I couldn't spend 3 hours back here, no chance. Fortunately, these seats here have got loads of room and they slide back and forwards, which means you can kind of trade second row space for third row space. I think I'd like a bit more, please. Whether you go with 5 or 7 seats, you're going to get an enormous boot. With all 7 seats in place in this diesel version, you get 340 litres of luggage space. That's nearly as much as you get in a Volkswagen Polo. But when you fold the seats down, it grows enormously. Fold the middle row down and you get more than 2,000 litres of carrying capacity, and frankly that's getting on for van-like levels. There's more boot space in this than you will ever need, and frankly even a big family will be quite happy with how much is on offer. And while it's true you get a little bit less space in the plug-in hybrid version, it's still pretty roomy, 5-seater, so there's no folding rear seats under the floor or anything like that. It's cavernous. Irish customers get a choice of 2-litre diesel power or a 1.5-litre petrol plug-in hybrid. Now, the plug-in hybrid has a big battery that provides a range of around 100 kilometres, at least officially. Real world, you're probably talking 60 odd, but that's more than enough for most people's day-to-day usage. You could quite happily use that car for the school run or commuting and not use a drop of petrol all week. But then you've got the flexibility of a 1.5-litre petrol engine with plenty of power when the weekend comes and you need to go and visit the in-laws or travel further afield. To be honest, that'll only really suit the people who can charge at home and keep most of their journeys pretty short. And although it's quite refined, until you put the foot down, that 1.5 is a bit noisy when you rag it. But to be honest, the diesels are where it's at. Now, the 2-litre diesel engine comes in two flavours. You can have the basic 150 horsepower front-wheel drive option, which comes with a 7-speed automatic gearbox as standard, by the way. Or you can have this. This is the 193 horsepower 4-wheel drive version. And it's fantastic. 193 horsepower in a Kodiaq's more than enough. It does 0 to 100 kilometers an hour in about 8 seconds, a little bit less. And it'll do 220 kilometers an hour flat out. Not that you're ever likely to do that unless you visit Germany. The real advantage of it is it provides so much grunt, you never need to wring it out. Yet it's economical. It'll do about 7 litres per 100 kilometres, perfectly adequate. On a run, it'll probably do a bit better than that. Or of course, you could go for HVO, which Skoda have got quite big into in Ireland. It's basically vegetable oil that's been superheated and then had hydrogen blown through it. And it effectively creates something that's chemically identical to diesel, but wasn't dug up out of the ground. Well, okay, the vegetables were dug out of the ground, but you weren't digging up old dinosaurs in the middle of the North Sea. Obviously, there are some emissions equated with that. It's not, a catch-all. It doesn't instantly turn everything zero emission, but Skoda does say it will make cars much more efficient because it's much purer than petrol or diesel, and there's less environmental impact. So could be one worth looking out for next time you're filling up. Pink pumps if you're interested. Now, you are advised to check whether your car will work with HVO, but might be worth looking at. It is a bit more expensive than diesel, but not a huge amount more, and it's available in quite a few filling stations now in Ireland. The other advantage is the 4-wheel drive system, which gives this car a surprising amount of off-road capability. Now, don't go confusing it for a pickup truck or a Land Rover. It's not as rugged or as robust as that, but it will do way more than you expect it to, and it'll do way more than most customers ever need it to. It's got these clever gizmos like a screen that shows you what angle the front wheels are at, and it's got hill descent control that lets you kind of control the speed when taking your feet off everything. You don't need to press the brake. It controls the speed as you come down a slope. It's quite useful if you're worried about locking up the wheels on snow or ice. But whether you go 2-wheel drive or 4-wheel drive, the thing you'll notice most about the Kodiaq is the ride comfort. Now, it's not a magic carpet, and we are on Spanish roads, which, well, the words baby's backside come to mind. Anyway, it can only deal with what it's faced with, and it deals with it pretty well. Yes, a few bumps do sort of make their way into the seat, but generally it's pretty good. On a motorway, it's sublime, and that makes it a really nice car to cover long distances in. Some credit should go to this gearbox as well, which is brilliant. I mean, I'm sitting in barely moving traffic, but it's so smooth when you pull away, and it's smooth when you're up to speed as well. It's got manual paddles, so you can kind of take control if you want to, but you don't need to. It just deals with it all itself. Yes, this gear selector, which sort of twists like this, takes a bit of getting used to, but once you've got the hang of it, it's absolutely fine. And it's freed up all this space in the center console. You've got all sorts of goodies in here. You've got 2-bay wireless phone charging, you've got loads of cup holders, you've got cubby holes and storage. For family life, it's going to be great. The new touchscreen is a little bit better to use than before because it's got these little taskbar things that give you sort of regularly used icons that you can use as kind of shortcuts, and that makes it a little easier to navigate, but it still hides things in stupidly complicated places. And to be honest, I actually preferred the system in the old Kodiaq. Now, because the Kodiaq's so comfortable, you might be expecting it to handle like a Rhine barge that's taking on water, but not a bit of it. It's actually pretty good. It's not as agile as the Kodiaq, the smaller Skoda SUV, but it's generally reasonable. I mean, the steering's a bit light and a bit numb, but you know, it's a family SUV. What do you expect? All that really does is make it a little bit easier to drive around town. But if you can sort of get past the steering, the body control's actually pretty good. It doesn't wallow or roll too much in corners, and it feels really nice and stable. It's a great balance between handling and comfort. It's just kind of managed to make everybody happy. Yeah, it's not engaging, it's not exactly sporty, but what 7-seat family SUV is. Now, this car has more driving modes than it really knows what to do with. If I press this button and twiddle this knob, I've got Eco, I've got Comfort, I've got Normal, I've got Sport in the 7-seat SUV. I've got Off-Road, that's quite good because it allows you to use the hill descent control. And I've got Snow and Individual, so I can set it up how I want to. To be honest, they don't seem to make that much difference. The Sport mode seems to hold onto the gears a bit longer. The Eco mode seems to completely ruin the throttle response. Most people are going to leave it in normal and it'll be great. Now, overall, the new Kodiaq is really very good indeed. Is it perfect? Not quite. I'm still not completely sold on the touch screen, and a few of the features, like the bonging when you do 3 kilometers an hour over the speed limit, are a bit irritating. But actually, this is one of those cars with very, very few flaws. I don't look at it and go, oh, this is terrible, that's terrible, it's too expensive. You know, it costs, what, 50-odd thousand euro, and okay, that's a little bit more than an X-Trail, but not an awful lot. And if you want a 7-seat X-Trail, you'll actually find the Kodiaq's cheaper, even with a diesel engine. Now, what's impressed me about this car is the refinement. Diesel engines of old were pretty gruff and grumbly, but this one's really quite smooth. It's not as quiet as the plug-in hybrid, obviously, but unless you put your foot down, you don't really notice the engine churning away. I mean, that's foot to the floor, and it's not bad at all. Probably the gearbox ought to take some credit for that. The 7-speed auto is really very good. Funny selector aside. But yeah, I'm impressed. On the refinement front, this is great. It's quiet on the motorway, it's smooth. Top mark, Skoda, well done. The upshot of all this is that I can't really find anything to dislike about the Kodiaq. Yeah, maybe the touchscreen's not perfect, and you know, those rear seats are only for sort of short journeys or occasional use. But aside from that, it's such an easy car to live with. Skoda might have changed quite a lot with the new Kodiaq. It's more efficient, more high-tech, but at the same time, very little has changed. It's still the spacious, comfortable family car it always was. It's destined to be a hit, isn't it?